how are you? Hello guys, welcome to my Minecraft Let's Play. In general, do you think like superheroes can be influential and people can develop a deeper connection with them rather than just like seeing them as just as an entertainment purpose?
I read this one article that I think I sent you guys, or I talked to you guys about it, where they were talking about how, like, in old times, people use Greek mythology, like stories from, ancient, like, Greek text about, like, Zeus or historical figures within Greek mythology, like Hades, Poseidon, Zeus. They'd use those stories to teach morals and lessons and, have those stories for entertainment, but have messages embedded within them to like teach people things, right? The modern day version of that comes from Marvel and DC's like characters and how they're the modern Greek mythology because they also are stories for entertainment purposes, but they have lessons and morals and messages embedded between the lines that people can derive inspiration from.
That's interesting because for me, like that's a new take on it, you know? It's just really interesting to see how we have that emotional connection with superheroes. People back then, like in Greece, they had their gods, and like in Greek mythology, we find that a role
Mhm.
model in some way, you
Yeah,
know?
a role model. Yeah. A role model, someone to look up to and somebody to derive inspiration from. Yeah. And I feel like these characters, like, these Marvel and DC characters are that for a lot of people. Like a lot of people will read stories, Killing Joke or Marvel Civil War or like All-Star Superman that, are entertainment stories, but you can kind of read in between the lines and be like, hey, I think I can understand what they're trying to say here. And a lot of people for that reason will read these stories about, one or more characters and they'll either cope with their problems or it'll inspire them to change something in their lives from a fictional story, which is something that's really, really powerful.
But for myself, I would definitely say Spider-Man. Spider-Man didn't want to become Spider-Man, but he made that choice of, you know, I need to use these powers for good. Because
Mhm.
before, before Uncle Ben was murdered, he was kind of using them for himself, having that higher gain and an advantage. But after Uncle Ben's murder, he realized that great power comes with great responsibility, using his powers for doing the best, like for the greater good, and just not using it for himself and looking out for others. I think that's what's most important.
With great power comes great responsibility. Remember that, Pete. Remember that.
The reason, he has that costume and the mask is because the symbolism of like anyone can be Spider-Man, putting on a
It
mask,
covers his entire body and face so that it could literally be anyone under there.
anyone can take that mantle of Spider-Man. It doesn't
Mhm.
have to be a woman or man, anybody, it can be any
Mhm.
single person. So you actually feel like I could be this person,
Mhm.
I can be someone like Spider-Man for sure.
But I'll tell you one thing you may not have thought of. You know, one of the greatest things about Spider Man's outfit, his costume?
What?
He is completely covered. So any kid could imagine he's Spider Man because no color of the skin shows. He could be black under that, he could be red, he could be yellow, he could belong to any race. And that
True.
wasn't done purposely, it was done accidentally. But I think it was the best thing we did, making him so that he could be anybody under that costume.
I think
Yeah,
Spider-Man 2 was probably one of the best movies that showed that is because it showed that Peter Parker's life actively gets worse every time he puts on that mask. Everything about his life, every aspect, his friendships, his relationships, his job, his school, his grades, his family life, everything gets worse when he puts on that mask. He gives it up for a period in Spider-Man 2 and upon giving up the mantle of Spider-Man, he realizes that there's a hole, there's a void that can only be filled by doing the right thing. That's what's
yeah,
ultimately going to lead to a fulfilling life for him is
yeah.
by living by his uncle's
You've been
words.
given a gift, Peter. With great power comes great responsibility.
We'll hand it over to you now. So what is your, favorite superhero or someone that from like the superhero universe that is very influential to you, and what you have to say about them.
I would say Batman for sure. Batman is a character that I feel like the messages that come from his stories, there's so many, but one in particular that I feel like is very, very powerful is the aspect of trauma in his stories. Like I feel like Batman is such an interesting representation of what trauma can do to a person, specifically in his case, because I feel like the general consensus around trauma is that, like most people you go to, they always have these two lines. They always say, your trauma doesn't define you, or you are not what happened to you, right? Which is a roundabout way of saying, hey, go about your life and this will eventually just feel like it never happened, or you're supposed to just move past it and kind of pretend it never happened, right? But Batman brings an interesting question to the table. What if no matter how many years pass and no matter how much you improve as a person, you still can't get over this one thing, this one trauma thing that happened to you still sticks with you? Batman is kind of a representation of that case when that happens to a person, when somebody just can't get over whatever happened to them, right? And I feel like Batman has a really cool way of dealing with it. He does let his trauma define him. He does let it completely take over him, but in a good way. It makes him a better version of himself, the crippling fear of bats, and he turned into freaking Batman, right? And his parents getting murdered in front of him, he took that and he made sure that as long as I live, I'm going to prevent this act from happening to everyone else. So he took his trauma, he used it, he did let it define him into something greater. Whatever thing happened to you, I feel like Batman is a good example of showing that there's more than one way of going about it. You don't have to just be like, yeah, it happened, whatever, I can move on. There's other ways. You can use it to be better.
Use it for your strength.
Yeah, exactly. You can learn from it. Another aspect is how other kids, we've seen this in the comics a lot, and a lot of people harp on it for it, but I actually understand it fully. But we've seen in the comics that when a kid who's also been through the same thing and his parents has also been murdered, like Dick Grayson or Jason Todd or Tim Drake, when their parents get taken from them, Batman sees himself in them, and he sees that same trauma that affected him affecting these kids, right? And what he does is he takes them under their wing, he turns them into Robin, and he basically shows them, hey, here's my way of dealing with it. Because I know something like this can affect you so badly that you can't just move on from it. But I found a way to deal with it, right? And I can teach you that. It's just kind of a hint in a weird way of saying that, hey, like, struggle is good. Like, it builds character. You should be thankful for the bad things that happen to you because, the good things are good, but the bad things develop you to be better.
This kind of like makes me think about the iconic line from Call of Duty Black Ops 1. I'm pretty sure John F. Kennedy said it in real life too, but you know this one, remember?
Yeah. This one
Don't
hits
pray
so
for
hard.
easy lives. Pray to be stronger men,
I love that one, bro.
Yeah, it's such a cool line. It's so badass.
Zombies. Gentlemen, at times like these, our capacity to retaliate must be and has to be massive to deter all forms of aggression. Gentlemen, lock and load.
Viva la revolución! Any last words, Mr. President?
Yes, Jack. Any superlative words of inspiration for our humble troops?
Do not pray for easy lives, my friends. Pray to be stronger men.